Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk HR. Today, we're going to take on, what's the point of training? What's the point of investing in training? Why should you invest in training? Benefits of training, success stories. Because sometimes companies go, well, if we, everyone's seen the classic LinkedIn post. What if we train them and they leave? Well, what if you train them and they're terrible? What if you train them as a health and safety incident and someone's seriously injured? There's all the different permutations of that. So what I thought I'd do today is bring Uma and Lee together. Let's have a bit of a discussion about it. Let's give you some hints, some tips. Let's share some data because I love to pull some data into these things. And then let's just sort of talk about the importance of training. So I'm joined today by Lee and Uma. Uma, you're in Pakistan, an evening login for you. We managed to do one in the day the other day, so this must feel back to normal for you almost.
Yes. No, we did it at even later than this also.
Oh, this is true. And Lee, anyway, another day, another hotel room.
Anything for training,
Anything for training.
That's what I like to hear.
Another hotel room, another day of training for you, out and about.
Yeah, filming training today. It's been a bit of a different day for me today. I quite enjoyed it.
Like the weather, just pointing to things on a green screen like that, guy.
This is the we've been filming some manual handling training, which sounds like riveting fun, but we've got a company that actually makes it really fun. And yeah, it's been quite specific to the actual job that people do. So we've been getting in with the cars, which is good for a car company.
I'm not going to make my normal manual handling jokes, which I think I did about 3 times in a row with you. So,
yeah, I might have actually used it today, James, to be honest. I might have recycled that
one. But, I mean, let's talk about sort of defining training a little bit, because one of the things we've been seeing is like people think training is sitting in a classroom with someone stood at the front just teaching you, and it's more than that, isn't it, Uma? Training's a lot more than just someone standing in front of something and explaining something to you and you're there taking notes. It's more than just chalk and talk as it used to be called.
Yeah, it is. Basically, it is. Training has also evolved over the years. It's something that was not especially in HR in last couple of decades. It has penetrated a lot into the corporate sector, and in terms of the usefulness of the number of trainings that the organizations. People are using it as an excuse to have a day off. On the one hand, and on the other, the compliance-related issues with companies or regulatory issues that they have to train them, and then there is a organizational pressure or society's pressure that there has to be training. Organization has to conduct training. They have to, and then there are certain repeatedly said quotes by someone who has been a CEO, and he's saying that it is better to train them and let them leave, or let them have in the or let them be in the organization and not doing much. And there are different kinds of quotes that trainers use, in fact, or the organizations use to promote the training. But on the other hand, it is a wonderful tool if utilized properly. Like if it is not something that is not evidence based, if it is not governed by any outcome, and if only a lecturer or a trainer is standing there and he teaches or trains one day and then leaves the other day, all the onus comes on to the HR manager or the director of HR to take it forward. But it is the trainers. I personally do it, and I feel it also in my training programs that I would like to take my trainees along with me for next at least a couple of months to see that what change it has brought in them in terms of the training, and is their efficiency or their productivity has improved or not, or if they have learned something tangible out of this or not. So there are a lot of good things into training, yes.
I think it's probably one of the areas I benefit, because obviously I do the training on the CIPD qualification. So I see someone's first assessment and I see their 7th assessment and I see all the feedback that we give them in the middle and how they progress through. But Lee, as Uma said, training's just a day off. So you must never work as a trainer.
You've not been to my training session. That's my answer to that one. I think it can look like a bit of a jolly sometimes because, like you say, it's not just chalk and talk. And I think people used to feel that they'd done a day at work if they had sat there and written 14 pages of notes that they probably then couldn't understand their own handwriting afterwards and learn nothing from it. But they felt like they'd done a day's work. But actually, particularly with, management training and senior leadership training courses and programs that really help to improve skills, it can look like a bit of a jolly. One of my colleagues has got some fantastic LinkedIn posts where people are trying to move a ball through some drain pipes. I'm not going to try and explain it because it's only going to get worse. But it's brilliant. I've been a delegate on that, and it's so much fun. And yes, for me to say it's so much fun, just stay off then, wasn't it? But actually, I learned a little bit more about my team there. I learned which ones felt a little bit insecure at times, which ones communicated in a certain way, which ones had certain skills, like being able to run really fast to catch a ball, or to actually, command the room a little bit. You can see the future leaders and things like that. So yes, it's fun, but it also has value to it as well.
And I think you touched on the main sort of thing that I think people probably are starting to miss with some of the training, which is training can be fun. Training should be fun. If you're actually going to remember this stuff, it can't just be a boring repetition of information, can it, Lee? It has to be fun.
It has to be enjoyable. It certainly has to be enjoyable. If you look at your Kirkpatrick model, which is something that I actually use in practice quite a lot. I don't like to stick too rigidly to models, but that is one that I use quite a lot. The first one is, have they enjoyed it? Because the reality is, if they haven't enjoyed it, they're not going to want to come back. And if they have to come back, if they're prisoners, they're just going to switch off. They don't want to be there. They're not going to take the message. And the whole point of training, why are we actually doing it in the first place, is to get some knowledge across that we need for some particular reason, whatever that reason is, to help the individual and the business.
Now, we're going to do some stats to see what percentage you think certain things are, because I love to look at some. What percentage of the UK organisations use e-learning as their primary method of teaching, do you think? And either of you can guess, just give me a percentage.
These pre or post-COVID?
This is 2021. So in the middle of.
70.
Uma? Higher or lower than 70%?
I think 50%.
68. So very
close.
This isn't bullseye. Oh, isn't it? Is it The Price is Right? Actually, you're a penny over, so you don't win anything. It's who that gets it. 68% of UK organisations reported using e-learning as their primary method in 2021. Classroom-based accounted for 22% of training methods, and on-the-job training made up 10%. Now, Uma, there's been a big move towards e-learning, and obviously, as a e-learning training provider, it's brilliant. But so many people just use it as a mechanism to tick a box, don't they? And e-learning can be so much more than just, here's a video, watch this, answer this quiz, right, you're trained. How do you use e-learning to make it sort of help people understand information?
Which one of us?
No, sorry. My fault.
Yeah, it's me. Okay. I do a lot of e-learning, in fact. I deliver the training programs, but the drawback, there is a cultural thing also in terms of e-learning, in fact. The interaction of the trainer that is coming in front of you, standing in front of you, and it's tough for the trainer because the person is exposed all the day in front of the participants. He has to be very well prepared. But on the other hand, the e-learning is comfortable for everyone who is anywhere into the organization, or they want to do it on their own time. But for the effectiveness, we need to see what is the purpose of the training. And if the purpose of the training is served through e-learning, it's a good enough. If the purpose is not served, even the physical training is not good enough. So whenever an organization has to handle a training program, be it e-learning or a physical learning, the program or the objective should be very clear. And it is primarily the responsibility of the HR to understand why HR is doing that training, or starting an e-learning platform into the organization. I've seen organizations which have a very effective LMS for their own people, and their staff go onto the LMS, they can click the boxes, they can choose the training programs, but at the end of the day, they are not doing anything. They are not developing, or the organization is not performing. So that's not the point of giving them lots of LMSs or a lot of data. But the objective is to fulfill the productivity. You see, the objective of any organization, it's especially the corporate organization, is to make the profits. The goal is to be more effective, do certain things in good time. Once you are doing something, in 2 months down the line, you should be doing it better. So if that's not being fulfilled, then of course e-learning or physical learning, they would not be of any utilization.
And Lee, sometimes people treat learning like e-learning can be a chore, can't it? In terms of you must tick these boxes. Like when it's normally part of the onboarding process, go through these 20 different click-throughs, pass the test. Therefore, we know that you're safe and this and that and the other. And whilst I get the rationale behind it and stuff like that, their introduction to that company is learning is a tick box. Learning isn't enjoyable. Learning is just this process that you have to go through, and it stops you from making money. Or if making money, providing service, doing whatever job you're in. I was thinking making money, so I was thinking car salespeople trying to sit down and do an entire day of training. They'd be like, I could sell a car in this time and I could be making money. And we've got to educate people that actually e-learning can be beneficial. If it's done well, you will be better for it.
The whole way through that question, I was thinking of my answer, and the very last words you said it, and it's if it's done well. There is some very, very poor quality e-learning out there. In fact, this is only my wild guess. I'd say about 80% of the e-learning out there is fairly poor quality. But the other 20% is incredibly useful. It's really, really useful. And it's useful both for the business that we're providing a service to as HR professionals, but also for the individual. Example of that, funnily enough, is cybersecurity for me. So I'm going to name drop the business because it was good. When I worked at Nestle, they had a brilliant cybersecurity e-learning package that was probably about 30 minutes long, something like that. Now, I'm not particularly good with tech, particularly for my age. I'm not particularly good with tech. I learned so much from that, and I can protect myself personally on my own iPhone from doing that course. It's not even just about protecting the business. I personally took so much from that. However, the business that I work in currently, we've just revamped our cyber training, our e-learning, because it was so poor. It was just a really bad quality package. It had a video of the Muppets in there that was about 6 minutes long, singing a song about forward and delete or something like that. And it was in there about 4 times as well. And of course, the e-learning software records whether you actually watched it or not. I'm not going to lie, that was my time to go and make a coffee while that video was playing itself out. And I'm a training manager. Really hope no one from my organisation is watching this today. I think I've told them already, to be honest, and we have revamped it now. But there's bad quality learning, there's poor quality learning out there, there's good quality learning out there. But the value of e-learning for me, if we think again as HR professionals, where's this going to go? If we think about safety as an example, which is one that's often put onto e-learning, is e-learning a good format for that? If you do good e-learning, then yes, it is, because we can prove to a tribunal at the end of the day, or to any kind of court of law that this might go to, that we have trained our people on the correct principles of lifting, in the manual handling example. If there's, thank you, James, Don't do your shoulders though.
No, sorry.
Doing it wrong. Do your relearning, James.
Okay.
Or whatever it might be, fire or trip hazards. I don't know, whatever. If we can prove we've trained our people and we've done that effectively, and that's the key thing, then that does actually protect us as a business. And as Uma said, we're here to make profits, and that's really important. However, again, it goes back to the quality. If you think about a car park, right? Park outside here, it's going to cost me £10 to park overnight. If they put that parking charge notice that they're going to charge me £10 on the inside of a traffic cone that's 4 miles away, that's not an effective method of communication. And I could easily say, I didn't know I had to pay to park there. However, if it's in a great big sign and it clearly says it's £10 to park here with an arrow in great big letters, then that message got across. And I think that's the equivalent of the quality of e-learning, isn't it? If the e-learning's a bit rubbish and the message is completely misconstrued and we've no idea, it just goes on forever and ever, then it becomes a bit ambiguous. But if the e-learning is really clear and really effective and it uses the correct learning methodologies like VAC or whatever else, then yeah, we've got the message across. We can prove that, but also we've actually impacted that individual as well.
Now some cool stats that actually, when you look into the benefits of training, the UK Department for Business and Energy found a 10% increase in productivity on average when they got people involved in training. The Institute for Employment Studies found that regular training, people are 3 times more likely to stay with their employer because they're getting constant development, they're constantly improving. Open University found 84% of UK organisations stated that training their employees resulted in increased innovation and creativity within their teams. So sometimes it is really important, isn't it, Uma, to just take people out of the day-to-day and get their brain working in a different way.
It is. I mean, of course, that's why the trainings are tuned to change the behavior of the people and give them some new food for thought. And particularly, I mean, since I'm also a trainer and Lee is a trainer and you've been training, so we always support the training. I mean, I would love to have my client moving out with me and going out and taking them 20-25 people every month to a hill station and giving them a new food for thought. I mean, that is exactly the purpose of the training. In fact, that people should be having new ideas coming into them and new ideas. And that's why the trainers also enforce, and I usually enforce my clients to move out of their regular day in office. The earlier thing that I was saying, that yes, it can be a day off for them, but yes, it is then the trainer's job. It is the participants thinking that this is a day off. It is the trainer's work to make it work for them, not only as a day off for them, but also to take something productive out of this. And that's why we as trainers emphasize that people should be moving out of their daily routine of the office and coming out at some neutral place to get trained, because that's the idea behind the behavioral change into the people, that people would think that, okay, this is something that is and trainers should make this, and the HR people should also make it as a celebration for them, that those who are being trained are not being penalized, or they are not being, since they are not performing well, so that's why they are being trained. The other side of the same coin is that since they are performing well, since we as a company or as a trainer or as a HR manager, we want them to grow further. We want to bring their best version into the company. So that's why we want to take them out and train them. And that's one very important thing of the training. The outcome of it is that an individual should be bringing in its best version into the work. And that best version, I mean, we all use mobile phones and laptops and everything, and we change the laptop or the mobile because the new version is there, and the new version has better features. And those better features should be in any individual also. And those individuals can gain those better features by attending some good training programs. And this is the trainer's role to help them bring out their best version of themselves that is hidden in them, in fact.
I really like that analogy. Taking someone out of work is like updating the features of a phone. You're giving them new thinking, new ideas, new things to come away with, and they come back into the office as iPhone 15, i.e. employee 16. But one of the things I always say, Lee, is if you go into a training for a day, as long as you go away with one thing as a minimum, one thing that can help you improve in your day-to-day work life or whatever it is that you're learning about, it's been beneficial. Because as long as you're constantly finding new ways to improve, then that's great. Not everything's going to be applicable. Not everything's always going to work. Not everything's going to be perfect. But as long as you can find that one thing, and that's the mentality of the learner, really, to go and go, I'm going to find at least one thing that's going to change how I work. What do you go in? What's your mentality as a learner when you go into these types of environments?
As a delegate or as a trainer?
As a delegate first. And then
I'll be honest, as a delegate, I'm very nervous, actually. I've kind of forgotten how to be the delegate. I was a delegate on a leadership development program a few weeks back, and I admitted at the start I was very nervous. I didn't really know how to be a delegate because so many companies that I've joined, I've delivered my own induction. It's been, right, we don't have an induction program. Can you write that and deliver it? So that's my induction into business. So I'm never the delegate. And the same with that, I've been very fortunate to have delivered a lot of leadership development, which has kind of meant that I've not been on that program as the delegate. So, I do understand that a lot of people out there are quite nervous to come on training. I think, again, as HR professionals, we need to recognize that. The induction that we deliver at the moment, I know full well people in the business have told me they don't want to come on it. They do not want to come on it. They don't see it as a jolly. They see it as something they have to do, and they're nervous about it because they think there's going to be 50 people there. They're going to have to stand up and say, hello, my name's Bob, and the interesting fact about me is, and they're absolutely dreading it. They don't want to present in front of other people. Particularly our technicians, quite a lot of them are introverts. It's an industry that attracts quite a lot of introverts. So they don't want to do that. So we do a slightly less invasive introduction to people by playing a game of bingo, so they can just have one-on-one conversations with people and walk around the room and then win some chocolates at the end of it. So again, it kind of goes back to the quality of learning. You can have some really good quality face-to-face learning, and again, some really bad quality face-to-face learning. So I'd like to think people will get more than one thing out of it. But to go back to like the start of your question there, I think if people leave with one thing, I'd like to know what are their goals? Either what's the business's goal or what's their goals? And it depends on what kind of training they're attending. If we're talking about some career development or leadership development, we kind of need to know what their goals are, because hopefully that day is going to be valuable all day for them, as long as the learning that they're doing is actually aligned with their goals. It might be that the training, let's say again, health and safety training, something like that, actually is in line with keeping them safe, and that's our goal, and that might be a non-negotiable for our business, that we will keep people safe. I think that's quite a fair non-negotiable, even though people don't want to attend that training maybe. But equally, going back to the goals thing, I've had to deliver training to delegates that don't want to be there. I've had to deliver, an 8-week management program to people that do not want to be there. They don't want to be a manager. They've been put on it maybe as some remedial thing. They're quite junior in a management position. They've messed something up, and therefore the way of, I don't know, some sort of way of proving that we've done some kind of disciplinary is to put them on a learning program, and that they just end up being disruptive. They don't want to be on the learning program. I think that needs to be a question rather than a command as to whether we put them on a learning program.
Now, I was looking at the main reasons, the main challenges to sort of training, and there's two main ones. The first is 36% of UK employees in a survey cited the lack of time as the main reason they couldn't do training, and 27% were resistant to change. Got it perfect. Don't need your help, Lee. Don't need your help, Uma. I know what I'm doing. Just watch me run. How do you deal with that type of personality, Uma? Someone who goes, I don't need it. I'm perfect. It's fine.
I let him be. So the people are someone who says he's perfect. So why I should bother him? They let him be perfect. Actually, the issue is that people. This is one of the objections that trainees or trainers on training face usually. But on the other hand, it is basically the new science that is coming up is data analytics. It is the patience that we as trainers or HR professionals must have, that and should show them the CEO. Usually CEO says, or the chief, all the C-suite professionals, they say that we don't need training. And they are very right. I mean, once I'll give you an example for that. In fact, one of the CEOs told me that he want his C-level staff to management to get trained on leadership and teamwork and communication. And I told him that, look, if they are in the C-suite and still they don't know leadership and communication and teamwork, why are they there? And why do you want them to train them like that? I mean, in that sense, what you are doing is actually degrading them or perhaps not respecting them well. So as HR professionals or as trainers, we have a role to educate our clients also in terms of they saying that we don't want any change, we do not need any change, or we want this kind of a training. It is us, our HR professionals, who have that role to educate them that, look, these people who are in the C-suite, they do not need training. Perhaps they need executive coaching. So executive coaching or a mentoring at that level, that will enhance their reputation, their ego, that will serve their ego better. So as everyone, I mean, if James, tomorrow I'll come to you, or Lee, I come to you and I tell James that, look, you are not doing HRC online very well and you are not recording the programs very well, you need to be trained. So we'll say that, okay, I'm doing it for many years and I'm a CIPD qualified person. So how can you, what improvement you can give to me? So this is basically, I have to show you data that, look, you can go from here to here. Your audience can increase, your footprint could increase, or you could go there if you have these kind of a thing. So one, the objections are there, of course. Everyone makes that objection because at the end of the day, CEO has to spend money on that. It has to invest. When the investment is there, when the time consumption is there, so they are justified to make all these objections on training programs. It is our role to help them understand what improvement we are bringing to them. So it's not their fault. Perhaps I see in objections, it is the trainer's fault or the HR professional's fault.
I think it's really interesting you mentioned that. Obviously, a lot of the C-suite go, we don't need training, but I haven't. The most training I ever had was when I became a director. Like, they threw coaching and development and training and improvement and this and that. Like, I never had more training than when I became a director. So I think it's really interesting that, you know, sometimes it's like, oh, we don't need it, it's fine. But like, from my experience working in an education company, we got more than I've ever seen before. Like, it was non-stop, like away days for this, training for that, and it was disproportionate to the people that actually needed more training and more support. From a resistance to change perspective, Lee, how do you have any techniques for breaking through to people who are that, I don't want to do this, I don't want to try? Like, how do you help people feel comfortable in this situation?
I mean, it depends on what kind of learning we're talking about. If we're talking about something like leadership development or team building, again, they're very, very different to each other. You would hope people on the leadership development program are there because they want to be there at any kind of level, and whether it's remedial or whether it's preparing someone to be a leader, you'd hope it's because they want to be there and their goal is to be a leader and a good leader. And if it isn't, then maybe that, you know, the actual job role isn't for them, never mind the training program. And I've had that happen before. If we're talking about team building, again, you'll probably find that most teams who need some team building, if it's remedial, they don't want to be in that unpleasant environment, you know, of being in not a great team or a team that's not functioning very well. You know, most people come to work because they want to do a really good job and they want to be happy while they're there, as well as obviously collecting the salary. But I think the key thing in any kind of training, if there was one sort of summary of it, is what's in it for them. You kind of have to be a bit of sales and marketing as an L&D person as well, because if I tell you you're going to come to a training course that's actually half an hour further away than where you live, so you've got to get up earlier, find cover for the kids that evening or that morning, you know, you've got to provide your own lunch, or, you know, I don't know, you've got to put yourself out your comfort zone. Why? I'd rather just go to work. I chose my job, I'll just go to work. If I know what's in it for me, whether it's my career progression, whether it's getting along with my team better, whether it's getting a better understanding of myself. Again, we go back to sales role. If I'm going to be, a better salesperson and close more deals or get more leads or upsell better, and therefore I get better commission. I think we've got to start and end with what's in it for me, because any kind of behavioural change is actually quite hard. It's quite tough to do that, to break the habit. So you're only going to do it if you know there's something in it for you. So I think that's my key question for any training, is what's in it for you or for them, for the delegate.
Yeah. And the next part is I wanted to ask you both about some success stories that you'd had, just from a personal perspective, in terms of like training courses or something that you've set up, something you've implemented from a training perspective. And the additional aspect that I'd like you to think about is how it benefited the business, that sort of additional training that you did. So Uma, I'll start with you, just from a success story, from a training perspective, and how it benefited the business and how the training helped.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. Basically, one, I worked with hotel industry. In fact, I was the head of HR for Serena Hotels in Pakistan, and I was their trainer also at that time. And the training that we implemented there was a WOW training, WOW, winning our world. So in in hospitality industry, customer service is the thing. I mean, you have to make the guests happy every time you face them, and regardless of what you are facing inside, you have to smile outside. So what I did was, with my team, is that we trained, and this is the important part, that we did not only train the rank and file of the hotel. We in fact started that WOW training. That the training was for the rank and file and for those people who are actually serving the guests, like waiters, the housekeeping staff, the front desk staff. But we actually implemented that training from the executive committee. And the executive committee, all the 13 or 15 people who were head of the departments, they were sitting in the training for whole day. And they were trained that why we are doing this WOW initiative in the hotel, and what it will entail, and how we are going to take it forward. Once they understood it, my role as a trainer, as an HR professional, became very easy, because then they were my ears and eyes and hands, and they were implementing the processes that I wanted to do, or management wanted to do. In the second step, we took the training towards the assistant manager and the junior management level, and we trained them as to what we are going to do. In the last step, we did that training with the rank and file, and in that, the huge hall was filled, and all the 100 plus, I think 150 staff was there and attending the training at the same time. And that was a short training of about 2 to 3 hours only, and we gave them the feed that why we are doing it, and your managers know it, your directors know it, and you do it, and we are standing behind you. And what happened afterwards is that everyone started to implement the learning of that training in front of the guests. And we established a performance appraisal mechanism aligned with that training, that whenever any guest is any front office person or housekeeper or a waiter will serve a guest out of the way, do something as a result of which the guests say wow, which means WOW. The guest says wow, he was not expecting it, and he did this, and the waiter did this. He can go back to his office, mark it on the chart that I did this and this was happened, and the guest was happy like this. And at the end of every month, we collected all such incidences and rewarded the best person of the month based on that wow that he created in front of the guest. And on the basis of that, Serena Hotels, where I was working, in fact, we were somewhere around 95% occupancy. And for a long number of time, despite, all the other few other variables, security and other things, we remained at 100% occupancy, and the guest satisfaction rate also increased, and the business, of course, increased also. So the basic theme was, to conclude my example, is that for training, it has to start from the top. If top knows what their juniors are doing and they are trained, they will support the juniors. Or else, once I go to the juniors only training program, they always say that please teach this to our director also, because they don't do it. They ask us to do it.
You get anti-sponsors and stuff like that, and it's a great example of one, effective training and stuff like that, but two, also successful implementation of change, which is get the senior leaders on board, and then it's a consistent message all the way through, and it embeds the change, and there's a reinforcement of the positive. Because what you so often find is, it, like you say, if you go from the bottom up, then you'll have different directors with their different opinions going, no, I don't want it like this, I don't want it like, and then the change fails. And implementation is probably one of the biggest areas where change does fail. So this is a really good example of senior top down embedding the change. What about you, Lee? Training success story.
I think for me, it's psychometrics, because they really get into that person's world. I've delivered insights discovery, which is one particular flavor of psychometrics. That's particularly easy to understand. I've delivered that to people across all different levels of the organization. Each time it has quite profound effects for people, particularly if they've never done psychometrics before. And it's interesting because the what's in it for them is probably not that clear at that point, and then they get the profile and they really think they understand what's in it for them, and it can be quite life-changing for people. And sometimes that's inside and outside of work. So going back to the question of what's in it for the business, you get people who can operate a lot better and understand themselves a lot better. So at whatever job they do, they're going to be slightly better at it because they're more comfortable within themselves. I think there's a lot of introverts trying to be extroverts because they perceive it's quite, we all perceive it's quite an extrovert world. It isn't. It's just that the extroverts by their nature will make themselves heard a little bit more. So, introverts can be left in a place where they're trying to be something that they're not sometimes. And when they get that understanding, and when other people get that understanding of them and how they operate in a team, I've seen quite a lot of people's careers accelerate after getting that understanding and that self-awareness. So you get a lot more team harmony there, and people understand what their own contribution is.
Well, what's your preferred psychometric?
For me, insights.
I've not done that one.
Yeah, they're different flavors of Carl Jung, aren't they? You've got DISC. Is it HBDMI?
DISC, I've done that one.
Yeah, DISC's really, really similar to insights. They're all telling you fairly similar information. My training's been with insights, and I absolutely love it. And I find that I don't think I've ever given it to anyone who hasn't loved it. They walk away with a massive smile on the face and the profile in the hands, and they actually go forward and use it quite a lot. Again, you could train that really, really poorly, and people would leave with a profile that they don't understand what it says.
Yeah, I was reading an article this week actually on LinkedIn where MBTI gets used in South Korea, not just for job interviews for things, but they also use it in dating profiles, and it's sort of embedded the culture across the entire country because they use it to understand their potential partner that they're going to be dating and stuff like that. And it's used sort of nearly as much as it's used in the NHS. It's very much used in the NHS MBTI. And it's just sometimes psychometric just gives you that insight into your preferences, why you do certain things, what gives you energy, what takes energy, because that's critical for me, especially when it comes to training. If you know what gives you energy and what takes energy away from you, you can make a lot of positive and negative decisions. Now we're going to move on to an unpopular opinion when it comes to training. And I don't know if you've got any unpopular opinions yourselves. I'll give you a minute to think about it. But I even put in a message to Lee when we were talking about it. I've got what I think is quite a controversial one, which is I believe face-to-face learning is only appropriate if you're trying to embed long-term change. I think e-learning is better if you're trying to achieve something in the short term, like an examination or an assessment, because it's easier to commit it to your medium-term memory because you can go back a lot quicker and check it. I think if you're trying to embed long-term change, face-to-face is probably suitable, but short-term, I think it is not the most appropriate method, because the second you walk out of that classroom, within a week, you'll have forgotten over 90% of it and you can't go back. So my unpopular opinion is I think for medium-term and examination content, e-learning is actually far more effective than any form of face-to-face, which may be controversial, you may agree or disagree, but that's mine.
For me, it's more the complexity of the message as to whether I'd decide if it needed face-to-face or e-learning. I think that a slightly more simple message you can get across better. And it's not to say it has to be a really simple message. You can get
I don't know,
across.
You see, this is where it gets interesting for me, because like accountancy qualifications, 50% global fail rate, pass rate, fail rate, whichever way you want to look at it.
Yeah.
We launched what we call live online, which is 2-hour webinars as opposed to full day lectures. Ran it for an entire exam sitting. The live online learners who could go back and rewatch the recordings every time they got a question wrong and did their tests, their exam rates were higher than the face-to-face learners. So there was a big, and that was strategic, top, master's level, pass or fail accountancy stuff. So I don't know. I think sometimes if it's research and it's complicated and you're bringing a lot of things together and you want to see something great, but I think if you're trying to solve a problem, it just seems to work better. That I've seen, and that's why I think of it that way. Do either of you have an unpopular opinion when it comes to training?
Well, what could be? I mean, for me, it's a little difficult to have an unpopular opinion about training. But I think we should stop training. And that's the unpopular. Don't do training for whole day. I mean, that's the waste of time of the delegate and only send any delegate to another training once the person has implemented the results of the first training. I mean, don't just do training for training. I mean, just stop sending them to a new training unless one proves that, okay, this is the one development I have done in myself, and now I qualify for another training. So
the full day thing's interesting. Do you know what? I really agree with the full, sometimes a full day, like the mid-afternoon lull after lunch.
No, you see, James, what happens is in a full day training, a trainer, I do a lot of full day trainings. Clients ask me to do that. But what happens is that we have to fill in lots of fillers in that, because the attention span of the people, I mean, it is very difficult for someone. If I am a delegate, if I am a participant, I will be really frustrated after 2-3 hours to sit in a person's training program. And a trainer, unless a trainer fills in lots of fillers into that, games, simulations, discussions, focus group, there are tea breaks, there are lunch breaks, and you're moving out, you're talking about certain unrelated issues, the whole aspect in all 8 hours or 9 hours, the material is only of 2 hours. So why don't you do the training for 2 hours? I mean, and then of course the participant or the delegate who has come to the training, he goes home and he has lots in his head, and he can't think that, okay, which one I should be using now or which one I should be leaving. So it should be 2 hours, pinpoint, do this, and then a review after 15 days. That's the training.
Yeah, reflection's critical when it comes to any form of training, but it's really interesting, isn't it? Thinking about a whole day, the mid-afternoon lunch lull, which normally, straight after lunch, there's normally some sort of big activity to get people going again. But
yeah, and icebreaker
days because people work full days, whereas sometimes the most effective message is a little bit shorter. It's not bad. I always like an early start as well. It gives you reflection time on the way home to think about what you've learned and stuff like that. Whereas if you're exhausted, you're just like, oh, thank God. And then, Lee, do you have one?
Yeah, mine's exams.
Yes, I agree. Whatever you're about to say,
very rarely
about exams, I'm for you.
Yeah, very, very rarely is like passing an exam and remembering, and whether it's multiple choice or how to write writing in a particular way, whatever, is very rarely the skill that you're actually then going to take forward and do. It's not a memory test. I think as long as we can assess people to an extent that we can see they know how to do what we're asking them to do, and then give them the resources to refer back to so they can remind themselves how to do it, I think that's effective learning. But testing them, on like a memory test or an exam where they've got to do it all, they've got to do like 20 different scenarios all in the space of an hour. They're not going to have to do that in the real world. And if they do, they'll have something to refer back to help them. So I don't think testing's
there's going to be
the right way to go.
There's going to be an interesting debate about exams moving forward with the rise of AI writing tools and stuff like that. What we're seeing a lot of is people using AI, people using writers, people using, people that have used previous assessments and selling answers. So we've been seeing this a bit in sort of the assessment world. And the really easy answer is, right, well, we'll just go to exams. But the truth is exams are exactly as you say. They're memory tests for people that can write quick, and nobody writes with a pen anymore. Like, it's just not that. Like, if you ask me to write for 3.5 hours at a rate of 1.5 minutes per mark, which is your average level 7 type writing speed, not a chance I could do that. And all the exam anxiety, everything that goes with it, everything that you try to do towards. But I do understand that there is this difficulty at the moment between how do we ensure that people have genuinely wrote this themselves, as opposed to using one of these brilliant new tools to do so. And I think in the world of professional quals, this is going to be a really big debate. And I think companies are going to go one of two ways, which is either more critical reflections and video, which is my preference, i.e. presentation, delivering it a bit like what we're doing now, but actually recording your answers. And the other's going to go more examinations. And I think examinations, I'm fully with you. I think it's wrong. But you'll find many people are very for exams because it's the easiest way you can check that everyone's doing the work that they said they're going to do. What do you think about exams, Zuma? You for them, against them?
Why should I be for them? I mean, that should be. I have grown above the exams, and I would love to just pass through.
There's nothing worse, is there? When you sat in a room and everyone there, it's like, and you always look. There's that one smug person that's like, "Yeah, I know what I'm doing." That's all I ever looked at in an exam hall. I hated it.
Yeah, ask me to speak for 3 hours, and I will happily do that.
I was actually quite good at exams, but I still don't think they're the way forward.
No, I video submissions, I think, a written part and then a verbal that goes alongside it.
There's one other thing I have written in my latest book. In fact, the video resumes. I mean, the resumes can also be on the video.
Well,
I mean, it would be just 30 seconds or 1 minute. It will save a lot of time of the interviewer, and it would save a lot of time of the candidate also. Just prepare a quick, crispy introduction of yourself, send it to the recruiter, and the recruiter will say that, okay, I want to meet this person. And that's the next step. And then you go ahead with that.
Modern cover letter, because no one reads cover letters. And also CVs is going to be a question moving forward, because all people do is just look at your LinkedIn profile. Why spend all your time writing a CV when someone's just going to compare it to LinkedIn straight away and go, does that match, does that match, does that match? And kick everything off with, I'm a hardworking and dedicated individual, which every CV starts with, by the way. So, yeah, maybe a video introduction is the way forward.
I think, sorry to be a bit boring with this one, but I think web forms are the way to do it, to just capture the raw basic data. And the reason I say that is because videos open you up to discrimination so much. You can see, on a video, you can see and hear so many of the protected characteristics. It's really hard to not make a biased decision, I think, where if you've just got the raw information on an application form, you can actually make you can go some way with the decision-making process without knowing anything about that person's characteristics to be biased about. I think probably the two together is the sweet spot. I think you need both the video and the web form.
Audio application, oh no, because again, protected characteristics doesn't matter. And you see, and this is where we get when we start to think about unpopular opinions and things that need to change. We've moved on to application forms from training, but it's all an essential part of improving and constant improvement and stuff like that. This has been the importance of learning. Hopefully, you can see why learning is so important. It improves companies' retention, it improves their turnover, and as you've seen by the examples given by Lee and Uma, it really makes a difference to organizations. Just because you're not in the mood for something doesn't mean that it's not going to give you some really valuable insights and some really valuable tools to use within your job. So always try to enter training with an open mind, because all you're doing is making it harder for everyone to learn if you go in with a negative mindset. This has been Let's Talk HR. This has been the importance of training. Thank you very much to Lee and Uma. We will catch you on the next one.